Hello and welcome back to my scrap room. This is Jennifer Perry. Today we're going to be working on an Allison Davis sketch, and I'm sorry I don't know what book it came out of. I just pulled it out of my notebook and forgot to write down that information, but I will link her sketches down below for you. So we're going to be working on an Allison Davis sketch with a combination of supplies from Close to My Heart and the July Hip Kit Club. And the photos that I am playing with today are from our trip to Australia a couple of years ago. I have officially started the 2018 family album. I finally finished 2016 and 2017. I think those took about 5 years each to complete. I'm not joking. So now I have started working on 2018, and this was a trip of a lifetime for a couple of reasons. First off, it was a very fast trip. We were in and out in 4 days because my husband was a speaker at a conference called NDC, and it is a conference for software developers, software architects, techie types, that type of thing, and he was about to bust his buttons. We spoke at the we spoke at the NDC conference in Oslo a few years earlier than that, and that was his first international speaking conference, and this was his second. We are hoping to make our way around to all of the NDC conferences. Keep your fingers crossed. We thoroughly enjoy them. But this was just my boy doing his thing. So I wanted to sprinkle in a few iconic photos with his speaking time slot. So that is what I'm scrapbooking today. And the July kit just fit the mood that I was going for with these photographs. So right now I'm just flipping through the pattern papers, trying to find two that I like. Now the sketch says to use 4 different pattern papers. Well, if I use 4 different pattern papers, I'm going to use 90% of this kit, and I'm not ready to use 90% of this kit yet. So what I'm going to do is take 2 of the papers that I like and cut out what I need from those. Now I need to take a moment while I'm shuffling around and picking up cardstock. This is Sapphire cardstock from Close to My Heart, and I'm also going to be using White Daisy cardstock from Close to My Heart. But I need to take a moment and thank all of the scrapbooking YouTubers out there. There are quite a few on the Hip Kit design team that I'm sorry I don't know their names. We have Inky Quill and we have Laura Albert. Those ladies, all in combination, helped me get my scrapbooking mojo back. I kind of lost it the last couple years, and it's the first time I've really taken any type of break with scrapbooking, and it was the longest I've ever not consistently scrapbooked. And actually I was a little bit afraid that I wasn't going to be consistently scrapbooking like I had in the past. Now I've been retreat scrapbooking, where you load up all of your stuff and you go somewhere for anywhere from 2 to 4 days and you just powerhouse scrapbook with your friends. I've done that several times over the past 2 years. But as far as sitting down and just playing in my own room and enjoying my own supplies, I haven't really done that lately. Now in part I need to blame Diamond Art Club and diamond painting, because I fell down that rabbit hole head first. Thoroughly enjoy it, found a new hobby, and of course, you know, sometimes when you find a new hobby, you give it all your love. But I think part of that happened is because I kind of lost my mojo for scrapbooking for a little while, and I was scrapbooking. I could easily work my 3-day shifts, 12-hour shifts, 36 hours a week, and then come home and still do 40 hours of scrapbooking. I could easily do that. And I think I just burned out a little bit because I've been doing it for almost 20 years. So I took a little break. That's why my little scrapbooking buddies that have been following me for so long, that's why you haven't seen much content, is because my brain, I think, just got tired. But these ladies, I've been watching their channels, which I am using quite a few Laura Albert tricks in this video, where she was, you know, cutting up the side of the packaging to open the package sideways. How many times have we, you know, opened the package up the way it's supposed to be and you can't get your stuff back in? So when I saw her do that earlier this week, I was like, okay, I was this many old when I learned how to do that. I felt silly. So what I'm doing here for a moment is I found these strips. They come in the kit. I found these strips and I needed 2. So I pulled out my ancient Deckle scissors. These are scissors that was one of my very first purchases for scrapbooking supplies. And I'm trying to match the edge of the original strip. So I needed 2 of these, 1 for each side. I'm doing a 2-page layout, and I needed to match it up. So I thought I'll pull out my Deckle scissors. It actually worked for matching up the pattern, but you're going to find out in the end I don't end up using these because I forgot to measure and they don't go all the way across. They are not 12 by 12 in length. So I'm going to do all this fussy cutting and stuff and decal cutting, and they're not going to fit, and I'm not going to end up using them. But I come up with something different. So anyway, with the thanks of these ladies in the YouTube community, I have slowly but surely gotten my little mojo back, and I feel like scrapbooking. What I'm going to be doing is sprinkling in both diamond painting and scrapbooking throughout the channel. I'm going to try, and I hate to say this because every time I say it, something happens and it doesn't work out that way, but I'm going to try and do 2 or 3 videos a week with the sprinkling of all of my happy. And if you're a diamond painter, feel free to watch. If you're a scrapbooker, feel free to watch. If you're not interested in each other's dreams, passions for crafting, don't watch those videos. Just watch the ones that you want to watch, and we will all be happy, and I am perfectly okay with that. Crafting is crafting, and we each have our own happy. So I am still following along with the sketch, and you can see the sketch in the upper right hand corner. I did not realize it was still in frame. I am not sure if Allison Davis over at Scrapbook Generation wants these to be in the videos. I know at one point I took a class and she asked that we not show the sketches in the videos, but I don't know if it was just for that specific class because you had to pay for the class and it was a private Facebook group and all that, or if it's her stuff in general. So in the future, I do have a way of hiding the original sketch off screen. I just forgot to use it this time. I forgot that I had my little copy holder that I can sit in my windowsill, and I had this sitting where I normally put my iPad and just didn't realize it was in frame. So if by chance Allison Davis or anybody that loves her is watching, I didn't mean to put the sketch in the frame. I had a blonde moment, and I'll do better next time. I'm sorry. So anyway, what I'm doing now is just cutting the panels. And I love this sheet of paper because it reminds me of mixed media without the mess of the mixed media. And then I wanted something to tone it down a little bit. So there's a chevron piece that's just very tone on tone, very muted. And I think it works very well together. So I'm just getting it all trimmed down. And then what I'm going to do, because there's stitching in the sketch, but I take the stitching to a new level. She's got just a tiny bit of stitching around some of the embellishments, but I knew my embellishments weren't going to be the same as hers, so I decided to stitch the panels. Now I'm not going to show a lot of the stitching. I'm going to show just a tiny bit of it because I started stitching, and thank goodness I turned the camera off because it took me the rest of the day to get these 2 panels stitched because I kept having squirrel moments. If something was shiny in my room, I got distracted. And so it took me all day to stitch, and it normally does not take me that long. So I was very glad that I turned the camera off to conserve battery and kind of conserve your eyeballs a little bit because I was having some serious squirrel moments. Serious. I've pulled out my trusty Creative Memories corner rounder, and for those of you that have one of these, if something ever happens to mine, I think I'm just going to sit down on the floor and start crying because that is the best corner rounder on the market, hands down. So I'm very glad that I bought 2 or 3 extra because, like I said, if I lose them or if something happens to them, I may just sit on the floor and throw a hissy fit for a while. And I'm a grown woman, so it is what it is. So I'm going to clear the decks here for just a moment, kind of move my supplies and make things a little easier for me to stitch. And I'm also going to kind of place the panels and place everything the way I think they're going to be before I start stitching to make sure that it's going to look right before I do all of that stitching and then realize I don't like it. So you're going to see me just kind of clear the decks here for a second. I'm pulling out a couple of embellishments that I think I may want to use, which, by the way, I love the appetizer tray that I have my embellishments in. When you have a ton of itsy bitsy little bitty embellishments, it has just enough compartments so that you can separate things to make them easier to find. And if you have cats, for some reason my cats don't dig in that thing, so I can have little bitty pieces of paper and I put them in there and my cats will leave them alone. But you let me put paper on the table and they think it's game on. So I really like those appetizer trays. I've had them for about 4 years or so. I bought them off Amazon, so I don't know if I can still find the link. I'm sure if you just look up appetizer tray on Amazon, you'll find a version that will fit your needs perfectly. So here I am just testing out my little pattern before I start any stitching. Yep, I think that's going to work. I'm going to go get my embroidery thread box, and this is how I match up my thread to my paper. Now, whenever I get new colors from Close to My Heart, I take a swatch of that color and I take myself down to the local hobby shop and I sit on the floor and I just match up the thread as close as possible to the color on the cardstock. And that's how I get these colors. Now, there is a link in the Facebook group for a copy of this list of all of the current Close to My Heart colors. If you want a copy of that list, just go over to the Facebook group and it's in the files. But I'm just testing colors, holding it up there, going, do you work, do you work, do you work, until I find the one that I want. And I find that peach works very well. Now, I've been using a ton of peach thread. The DMC number for that is 761. And I go and I pull out my peach stamp pad and my re-inker. This is the EK Success EK Tools Precision Ruler. This thing is sticky and flexible, and I'm using it to pokey the holes into my paper. I don't know if it was meant for paper crafting or if it was meant for other crafting, but I really like this thing, partly because it's darn near impossible to get a complete straight line, and I like that look. I like that I did this quickly. It's a little not perfect, but it's handmade type look. I love that. So you're going to see here in just a minute, oh, Dumpling's trying to come over. Nope. You're going to see in just a minute that it's sticky, so I don't have to worry about push pins. I don't have to worry about anything moving once it's down. It just stays put, so there's no shifting while you're trying to poke your holes. Now, my little push pad right there is not a typical push pad. That is a 12 by 12 cork board that is used for bulletin boards. I just picked up a 4-pack at the office store. And when they wear out, I just go back to the office store and pick up another 4-pack of 12 by 12 cork boards, and they work perfectly for my purposes. I love that they're 12 by 12, so my paper is not hanging over the edge. So the stitching is finished. I've pulled out my inks, I've pulled out my re-inker, I've pulled out my shimmer spray, and I've also pulled out what I use as a watercolor tray, and it's that yellow and white ceramic egg plate. It's a deviled egg plate that I found at a consignment shop, and it is totally cute, and I had to have it. And I was actually looking for full-size egg plates for my daughter to be able to use them as her paint palettes, because she is a true legit artist, and I wanted her to have a reusable, washable, sturdy paint palette. Egg plates just came to mind, so I was able to find all 3 of these at a consignment shop. Hers are matching so that she has 24 different color palette holes in her plate. And I just love the fact that I was able to repurpose something that is meant for one purpose, and I was able to keep it out of a landfill, buy them from a consignment shop, and repurpose it and turn it into something totally different. And it's pretty. So when I have it hanging on my wall, it's just pretty to look at. Now, see that fan paintbrush over on the right of my white cardstock, sitting on the table being all innocent? Yesterday, it was calling to my cat. Yesterday, while I was stitching, I was thinking that it wouldn't take me as long as it took to get all the stitching done, so I pulled out my supplies and had them on the table. And for some reason, this was a siren song to my kitty cat. He kept sneaking up on the table, grabbing it by its bristles, and taking off running. And I would have to stop, along with being a squirrel and getting distracted in the first place, I would have to stop and go get my paintbrush and fetch it back and put it back on my desk. I finally figured out to just put it in a drawer because he was not going to leave it alone. But I think what I'm going to start doing, if I can't find my darn cat, just put a paintbrush on my table and wait a few minutes, because he'll come in here and he'll find it. I think it might be a good way to call him for the, when I have to take him to the vet. Just put a paintbrush on the table. He'll figure it out. So I am going to employ the splatter technique in just a few minutes to add some splatters, for lack of a better word, to my layout. And I wanted to get these panels adhered down. I was thinking, do I want to do it before I put the panels down, or did I want to do it after? And I think I decided I'm going to do it before so that some of the splatters can be on the panels. And I love to do splatters. It's just I end up getting them on the table, on the window, on anything that might be nearby. It all gets splattered. A few years ago when I was at the Close to My Heart album retreat, before they opened it up to customers, it used to be just for consultants, and we would all get together in Salt Lake City, and it would be a whirlwind 3-day hilarious time and you leave with a complete finished album. They tell you to bring your pictures and your basic toolkit, and they supply everything else. Well, we were learning to do this technique with itty bitty banquet tables and flying paintbrushes. I don't know how many of us had paint in the back of our hair because we were flicking paint everywhere. It was so funny for all of us to be somewhat artistic, and there are ladies out there that are way more talented than I am. I need a sketch to be able to do this stuff. I don't know how ladies just pull patterns out of their brain and it looks fabulous. I love sketches, I love books, but there are way more talented people than I am out there. But we're all, you know, semi-talented with this paper crafting stuff, but learning how to do mixed media on that day just gave me the giggles. And I will, every time I use that paintbrush in that set, because that's the set that I took with me, I remember that day and the fun that we had learning to do this technique. I'm just going to finish adhering the last of the panels down, make sure that everything is as straight as I possibly can get it. Nothing on my layouts is ever 100% straight. As much as I try, I can use a ruler, I can try and eyeball it, I can use magnets to hold down my paper. Nothing is ever 100% straight. So I'm going to try and get it as straight as possible for me. If you are one of those people that can do it straight, more power to you. Can you show me how? Because I just can't. And then I'm going to take a minute and mix my medium. So I brought out the peach stamp pad so that you could just see the color, and I will be using that later. This is the re-inker. I always buy the re-inker when I buy the stamp pad because the re-inker is so versatile. It can be used for so many things. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of the sheer shimmer spritz, and that is by Imagine Crafts. I just buy it off Amazon, and I'm going to mix a little bit of it in, just a touch. And that's going to add some shimmer to my Close to My Heart color. And right now it's looking very orange, but it's not. It's peachy. It dries perfectly. I was so happy with the way this ended up. And flickety flick, away I go. Do I think to cover my photos? Nope. I do not think to cover my photos. I don't think to move my fan. I don't think to do anything. I just start splattering. Willy-nilly. And I was amazed at how fast this dried. I didn't even need to get my heat gun out. By the time I was finished with this one, it was dry. I was totally amazed. But my fan brush is perfect for this technique. I love it. And see, it's basically, I mean, right there, it's dry. It's ready to go. I'm going to set things aside for just a moment and take a trusty baby wipe and wipe down what I can find as far as splatters. If you notice to the far right of my desk, you're going to see some silver shiny. That is the sheet metal that covers my entire desk. So all of my desk has sheet metal on it. The only reason that you see the wood grain wallpaper, I think it is, the only reason it's even on my desk is to cut the glare when I'm filming. But I love the sheet metal because I can use magnets when I get to this portion of my scrapbooking where I need to hold my paper down so it doesn't move, or if I have a fan going, the fan doesn't blow it away, or the cat's walking by doesn't shift something. I will take a magnet and just plop it down and it stays. And the sheet metal is also a protector for my surface when I'm using X-Acto knives, heat guns, whether it's the Ranger heat gun or whether it's the Wagner heat gun. It offers a layer of protection, and it's just very indestructible. My last table that my husband built did not have any sign of wear on the top. It had a little bit of sign of wear, like where we didn't have the sheet metal, but the top was pristine. So when we built this table, I knew I wanted sheet metal. Now, for some reason, the sheet metal that we bought this time was not as wide. That's why you see at the very top there's not any sheet metal, because it wasn't as wide, and I wanted it to actually be a little bit wider, but you get what you get. So now I am adding the sapphire horizontal strips, and it's this point that I realize, is that my camera or is that strip really crooked? I'm really hoping that is my camera and that I didn't put it down that crooked and didn't notice. So we're going to just pretend it's the camera until I can check, but keep your fingers crossed that I really didn't have a brain fart and didn't notice it was that crooked. But you can also see the beauty of the magnets. They are pretty much acting like a third hand, keeping my layout straight and still while I'm placing these strips. It took me a while to realize that the sheet metal top and magnets go together and play well together on this table, but once it did, it was a total game changer for me. I know there are some people that use the magnetized craft mats, and it's basically the same thing. It's just my entire table is a magnetized craft mat. I'm going to finish gluing down this horizontal strip, and then I'm going to check the back and make sure there's no overhang, because the left side was kind of playing with me a little bit. It felt like it was off just a little bit as far as overhang. When I flipped it over, there wasn't. It must have just been an optical illusion, but it felt weird. So like right there, it looks like I'm struggling just a little bit. So I'm going to flip the paper over and just make sure that everything's okay on the back side. And it ends up, and in fact, it even looks a tiny bit short on one end, but it's not. It's completely, everything's cool. So it may have just been, I had to trim these down a little bit, so it may have been my cut was just a little bit off. And that happens sometimes. We're human. So I'm just double checking myself. Placing my magnets back down. Love my magnets. And this is where I realize, yeah, they're too short. And I'm like, I wonder if I can make it work. Can I make it work? And then I'm like, no, I don't want to make it work. Not going to work. So I go and dig in my shimmer trim stash. I have quite the stash of shimmer trim to locate the proper color. Now I'm going to initially pick out the soft pink. This one would have worked, but there's so much pink already on the layout of that shade that I thought it would be too much. So the soft pink seemed to work really well, and I was like, oh yeah, that works well with all the panels. Let's use this one. I go to cut it and realize there's not much left. So that's where I go back to my shimmer trim board, and my shimmer trim board is just a cassette holder. If you're old enough to remember cassettes, we had these nice wooden cassette holders that hung on the wall. And a few years ago, my mother-in-law was going to get rid of hers, and I was like, nuh-uh, give me that. So she gave it to me, we painted it, and it is perfect for the Tim Holtz inks and my shimmer trim. So now I'm able to have all of that on the wall, and it works out perfectly for me. I ended up using the Capri shimmer trim, which is brand new to the catalog now that Close to My Heart just came out with, so that's why I'm opening it. Never been used, but it matches that turquoise blue that's kind of up in the armpit of my trimmer. And it matches really well. So I was like, okay, that works. I like that. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to measure out 12 inches using my trimmer. That way I don't have to worry about something being too short. I learned this trick several years ago with shimmer trim, and I have never looked back. Now, if I could just learn a trick on how to take that backing off, that would be awesome. So I need to tell you how I journal. See that vellum square right there where my hand is, over by my scissors on the right hand side? That's my journaling block. I have a process that I try to do about once a year, and I don't always get it done. Last year I didn't get it done, and it's the hardest thing in the world. Now that I'm so used to journaling this way, when I don't do it, it makes it difficult for me to go back and journal as I'm scrapbooking. So what I like to do is once a year I will sit down, and I normally like to do it in January because it's cold outside and there's nothing else to do. So I like to get all my pictures developed at one time. And as soon as I get them back, whether I order them from Walgreens, whether I order them from Persnickety or Snapfish, but one of those developers, once I get my pictures back, I put them into groups on how I want to scrapbook. And once I have them in those groups, I will sit down at my computer and I will just take a little stack of photographs. I'll let the story develop in my head. Once I have the story in my head with what I want to say, I will type it out in Microsoft, and I try to use a fairly neutral and easy to read font because my daughter is dyslexic and I want her to be able to come back and read the journaling when these books become hers. So I try to just be really careful about the font and not get too fancy. And then once I have it done in Microsoft, I have a template that I type it into, and it will print out 4 different journaling squares on vellum. And the only thing you really have to be careful with is just give it a chance to dry. Don't try to scrapbook it right away. Just set it aside and let it dry. And then after that, you have this journaling square that is clear and pretty much goes with any layout you choose to create in the future. And all of your journaling is done at one time. So when you are in a creative mood and you're just cranking out the layouts, your journaling is done. So I love when I do this. Template is just a regular Microsoft Word document that I figured out what size I wanted each of my blocks to be and just created a template with that on there. And mine is saved, it just says journaling blocks. And I know that when I look it up, that's my journaling blocks. And they're all pretty much 4x4 because that is a good size for me to either trim down some if I need to. It's big enough that somebody can read it without too much trouble. So it tends to work out for the style of scrapbooking that I do. Okay, so you're about to see a Jenny moment, a blonde moment, a brain fart. Call it what you will, you're about to see it. I totally forgot how to measure. I decided that I wanted to back this journaling block with just a plain piece of white cardstock. Now off to my right, I have a drawer that I put a little bit of cardstock in, scrap cardstock, but most of my scrap pattern paper goes in that drawer. And then if I need something, I just rummage through that little drawer until I find what I need. And this is where I just pulled out this white cardstock. Now you see me measuring. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's my measures. I got this. I got this. Watch what I do here. And I literally smacked myself on the head and went, are you kidding me? Just watch. It's coming up. Once I figure out how to put the blade back in my trimmer. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. I know how to use my trimmer. I'm just happily cutting, measuring out my cardstock, and it's a perfect fit. I forgot to leave room for matting. I forgot to put in that 1/4 of an inch. That makes a nice mat. So here I go. I'm doing it again, and I'm smacking myself going, you're wasting cardstock. You hate when you do this. But it's fixed. It's all better. And then I'm like, well, now that I fixed that, I want to distress these edges a little bit. And I was like, okay, oh, there it is. Took me a minute to find that box. Knew I had it, but I haven't used it since I moved into this room, and I forgot where I put it. This is a box of just each color of Close to My Heart. Has its own little dobby. And right now I'm looking for peach, and you're not going to see me grab it because it's off the screen. But each color has its own dobby. Instead of me having to have a, what's it called, an applicator, a stick for each color. And that is just that case is just a very old Close to My Heart accessory case that I took the foam inserts out of. I just popped in some Velcro for each of the blending discs, the little round blending discs, and they just stick on there. The backing, it's the same Velcro that is on the stick. So I use Velcro in my case, and it works out very, very well. I have one both for my Close to My Heart inks, and I have one for my Distress inks. When I figured out that I could repurpose that case and use it for this function, it just made me a very happy girl. We're just going to finish inking for just a moment, and then you'll see the full case in just a minute. It's been a little bit since I've used an actual blending tool to do any distressing. I still have the fingertip distressors. Those are my preferred. I love those, but I have to admit that the blending tool in this case for storage takes up so much less room than my daubers did that I have to just get used to it. See, here's the case. Very simple. I'm so happy that I was able to repurpose this case. And then I just put the applicator right on a little piece of Velcro, and it sits there. Everything's in. Dust free. Nobody gets into it like the boys, my cats, and it stays safe. I'm going to pull out my favoriteest tool in the entire world. I still call it a tiny attacher because Tim Holtz, it's not a tiny attacher, it's the Close to My Heart stapler. I actually own 2 of these. One stays in my retreat bag, one stays on my desk. And a few years ago, when I figured out just how much I actually liked this stapler, I kind of went nuts and I bought 30,000 staples. Because, again, I'm normally late to the party when I figure something out. They discontinued the stapler. So I luckily had enough time to amass my hoard. Yes, I hoard the staples, but I had enough time. I think I have a lifetime supply now. I really hope I do, because this is really the perfect attacher, besides stitching, and you guys know how I feel about stitching. So the sketch calls for all of the photos being 4x6 or 5x7. And that was my original intent. And then I got to looking at 2 of the photographs on this layout. One of them has a ton of carpet and the other one has a ton of sky. And I just didn't like the way it looked. I didn't like the way it felt. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off just a little bit of each. And it's going to make those photos a tiny bit smaller, but I think in the end it will make the layout visually more pleasing. I lost my word there for a second. So I really like the way that turned out when I trimmed it down. I thought about it for a while. I wasn't going to do it, and then I was like, nope, I'm following a sketch, but it's still my layout. And if I don't like it having that much sky, then I'm going to take part of it off. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video that this trip was 4 days. That's a very, very short trip for the flight time. We had 1 day to kind of relax and get acclimated to the time change and the jet lag. That was the 1 day Mike and I were able to get out and take a few pictures, our 1 day together. And then he had 2 days for the conference, and then we had to fly home. So I basically was on my own except for the 1 day, and it was magical. If you ever have a chance to go, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I used the hop-on, hop-off bus and pretty much went anywhere I wanted to go. And they have the best underground system, not just subway system, but there's businesses under there. So I went shopping topside and I went shopping below, and it was so much fun. And that's where I also figured out my love of potato cauliflower soup. I've had potato soup. I've made it my entire life, but I popped into this little bistro. I've always wanted to pop into a little bistro, and this was a true bistro. We just don't have this type of bistro in the South. And I popped in there, and I was like, I would like to order, and I ordered what I ordered. And I didn't realize it had cauliflower in it. Now, I like cauliflower. I just didn't know when I ordered it that I liked cauliflower. And I tasted it, and I was like, oh, what is this? This is very good. So I asked the waitress, I was like, I don't know what I just ordered. Can you tell me what I'm eating? And she explained it, and I was like, this is fabulous. And it was, I had these cute little ham sandwiches and these potato and cauliflower soup. And the difference is the cauliflower is the main ingredient. The potato is just a little bit of a backup ingredient. It's not supposed to be ingredient forward. And then it was completely smooth. It was a cream soup, which when I make my potato soup, it's all kinds of chunky and cheesy. So this was very different than what I was used to. And I actually went back to that little bistro twice. I liked it that much. And I actually came home and figured out how to make that soup on my own. So now we can have it anytime we want to. And it's just a memory in a bowl. And it's funny with this trip, because normally when I travel with my husband for conferences, I try to stay close-ish to the hotel in case he needs me for anything. I'm really there to be, as we like to say in our family, an assistant if he needs anything. But for this trip, I was just kind of like, see you, dude, you're on your own. I don't know when I'm coming back here. And I just took off by myself and did all the things. The hop-on and hop-off bus, I don't know if you've ever seen these. They've got them in many cities in the United States. You pay one fee however many days you want to ride, and you can literally get on and off whenever you want to. It's kind of like a city bus, but they take you to the tourist traps. And I would get off, go see something, get back on, get off again, go eat, get back on. And it was beautiful. I'm just sorting through this little bag of flowers that I've had for several years. They're starting to look really ragged, but I can still every now and then find the perfect flower for the perfect layout. And this layout called for a flower. I don't know why. There's nothing flowery on this layout. I don't know why they were begging so hard to be on this layout, but when something is yelling at you from across the room, you get up and go get that bag and put them on your layout. So that is what I did. And now I'm just fussing around in the bag going, is there something else in here that I need to be using? Because I'm literally trying to get rid of this bag of flowers. I've had them for years. I bought them to do my daughter's Paris trip. And I still didn't use all those flowers. And then, am I about to? Yes, this is the trick that I learned from Laura Alberts. Trim it up the side. And then you can put your embellishment back in that little bag easier. I was this many years old when I learned that. I'm not joking. The day I did this is the day I learned it. Where's she been all my life? I've been scrapbooking for 20 years. Where's she been all my life? That is so much easier to get the stickers back in their packaging. Look at this. Look, no struggling. They're back in. Where has she been my entire life? And then I normally would cut out that little piece where I stood up and went through the screen, but I wanted to show you there's a vase there. That's a flower vase. And that is where I keep 90% of my adhesive. I like to use score tape, and I have it on my Amazon Subscribe and Save, but it's kind of hard to store. So I found a vase that was as big as it was, and I just stack it up in there, and all of my other adhesive, dry adhesive, I should say dry, just kind of goes in that little vase, and it lives on my desk. So I just want to leave in that little part of me standing up and grabbing that vase because I wanted to share that tip. And then this is all of my sparkly bits. And I'm going to be very amazed, that little package right there. Look how well that matches my layout. And you have to remember, I'm using two different company kits. I'm using Hip Kit and I'm using Close to My Heart. And those dots came from the Daisy May. I'm sorry, not Daisy May. They are the Daisy Meadow dots from Close to My Heart. And look how well they go. I was like, okay, these have to go too. So they're going to be on there and they're going to stay. So I'm going to fidget for just a moment, get everything adhered down. I'm using the Daisy Meadows dots. They're enamel dots, but the packaging just says Daisy Meadows dots. And then I'm also going to be using the Bitty Sparkles. That is another thing from Close to My Heart that I hoard. Now they're still available with Close to My Heart, but I have got probably 100 packs of them. I love them because they are just the teeny tiniest little sparkle that adds just the right touch to your layout. And in just a moment, I'm going to, as soon as I finish fiddling with all this, I'm going to place my enamel dots and my Bitty Sparkles with my craft knife. And I just feel the need to put a disclaimer in here. I use a craft knife. It is a very sharp tool. If you see me using the craft knife and you choose to do it on your own, please be careful. It's a blade. It will cut you. I've been doing this for many, many years. I rarely cut myself, but I have. It is a precision tool that I like to use when I'm placing dots and biddies and things like that. It just is easier for me. If you have a different way of doing it for you, that you aren't potentially injuring yourself, please do. But if you want to try doing it this way, just be very careful because it is a blade and it is sharp. So we are rounding up the end of this layout. I thoroughly enjoyed working on it. It has been forever since I filmed a layout, so I was a little bit rusty. But I'm so glad you joined me today. I know you have a choice in channels. I know you have a very limited time on your hands, and I'm just very, very pleased and thrilled and honored that you chose to spend just a few minutes of your day with me. There is a list of products at the end of this video. If you would like to know everything that I've used, feel free to take a peek. Some of the items are discontinued. Some of them are still available. I am not on any design team, so I don't have any time constraints on when to use my products. So I just pull things out as they strike my fancy and as they strike and match my photos. So there may be discontinued items, there may be current items. It is what it is. I hope you enjoyed this layout. It has been a while since I filmed a scrapbooking layout, so I did feel a little bit rusty. I said that a little bit earlier, but I did feel rusty. In fact, I almost forgot to put those bitty sparkles on, and if you notice, you can barely see them on the screen because they're that tiny. But I feel like this finally came together perfectly. The sketch is different than what I did, but it fit my mood, it fit what my brain was trying to do, so it worked for me. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about sketches, is because they are the idea board basically for your layout. It gets your brain going, it gets you feeling creative, and then once you have just the visual idea, you can take off and fly from there. So here is the left side of the layout. Just a little bit of a close-up for you. And yeah, I think I really did get that crooked. Oh well, it's there now. And there is the right side of the story in the layout, along with my journaling block. And then here is the layout side by side. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed having you with me. Until next time, bye-bye.